Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope your day and your week have been going very well so far. Got a new day, which of course means a new MLB Player Prop video to share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. With a new day comes some new opportunities to go ahead and make some money. I have 5 MLB player props to go ahead and share with you guys in today's MLB slate. But first, guys, before we dive into today's picks, a quick little recap of how we did last night. Jumping on over to GuyBostonSports.com, we started off the night really solid. Three of our first four picks, did hit yesterday. The only one in the first 4 that did not hit was Vladdy Jr. So we were off to a solid start, and then Tyler Mahle, who had only 1 earned run through 5 innings pitched, a disastrous 6th inning, cost us that one. And then Andy Pages did get a hit, but no runs and no RBI. So unfortunately, a 3-3 night, not terrible, but not solid either. I did mention in Saturday's video, I believe, that I'm going to start upping my units to 1 unit per pick now that we've had a really solid rhythm going of late. And the downside of that, obviously, is when you have a 3-3 night like last night, you still lose units. So we lost 0.53 units last night, despite going 500, going 3-3. But it's all good. Not a terrible night. We did have a couple of good reads there, so hopefully some people did take some of these player props because we had a couple of good reads there. But overall, I think we can definitely do better. We've got 5 fresh player props in today's video to go ahead and dive into. So, not a terrible night last night, but I know we can definitely do better. Let's go ahead and prove it to you guys in today's MLB slate. No more time to waste. Let's dive right into today's picks. Wasting no time, jumping right into the outlier screen, guys. Our first player prop in today's slate comes from the Brewers-Reds game, 12:40 p.m. first pitch. So it's an early first pitch. Make sure if you're watching this video and you want to tail this pick to get it in as soon as possible because this is obviously an earlier game. We're going Daz Cameron of the Milwaukee Brewers under 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. We're grabbing it for -125 on BetMGM. It is available on a couple of different sports books for varying odds. And the data across the board on this player prop is very, very solid. 8 of his last 10 games, he's cashed this under, averaging 0.9 hits, runs, RBIs per game over the last 10 games. That's, of course, an 80% hit rate over his last 10 games. And honestly, if you take this May 31st game versus the Phillies out of the equation, it's been a really rough last 10 games for Cameron. Now, granted, he's only played 13 games this year, so an 85% hit rate on the year. 11 out of 13 games he's cashed the under, averaging .69, pause for applause, .69 hits, runs, RBIs per game this season. So kind of a small sample size here, but with what we have to go off of, hasn't had the best of starts. He's only gotten a hit in 3 of his 13 games so far this year. A lot of zeros across the board there, which obviously for our purposes is very good. Now, from a head-to-head perspective against the Cincinnati Reds, the data comes from last year's matchups, but in 2 of the last 3 matchups versus the Reds, he's cashed the under, averaging 1 hit run RBI per game across the last 3 matchups with Cincinnati. Again, all coming from last season. We also have the insight provided by Outlier. Daz Cameron has failed to exceed 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs in 11 of his last 12 games on the road. That, of course, dates back to last season as well, averaging .6 hits, runs, RBIs per game across the last 12 road games. That is, of course, a 92% hit rate over his last 12 road games. And again, that dates back to September of last year, as well as all of his games on the road so far this season. So really good numbers there. And looking down below at the key matchup stats, Daz Cameron, 161 batting average with a 2.6 WRC plus. Again, only 32 plate appearances so far this year, so take it with a grain of salt. He hasn't played a ton of baseball this year, but what we have to go off of, it's been pretty bad for Daz Cameron, which equals very good for us, preying on this man's downfall here. Versus left-handed pitchers, again, only 23 plate appearances, but the numbers are definitely a little bit weaker than versus right-handed pitchers. 130 batting average with a negative 24.7 WRC plus against left-handed pitchers thus far this year. And looking at Andrew Abbott, the pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds, having a really solid season. Some of his numbers do increase when facing off with right-handed batters, but they're very minor increases. ERA, batting average allowed, and WOBA, they all go up like a few points. I mean, batting average allowed .003, WOBA, it goes up .07, and then ERA has a little bit of a jump there, but not too crazy. Even at these increased lines, the numbers are still very, very solid. So, solid pitcher going up against a batter who has not had a great start to the year. I think it's a pretty solid matchup, and again, -125 odds, pretty good value. The rest of the player props in today's slate come from the later window. So, our next player prop, our second in today's slate, comes from the Phillies Blue Jays game, 7:07 p.m. first pitch. We got Andres Gimenez of the Toronto Blue Jays under 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. We're grabbing this one for -150 odds over on BetMGM. Again, like a lot of these player props, they are available on multiple sports books for varying odds. So if you guys want to go ahead and tail, if you guys want to go ahead and, Hard Rock Bet, really cool they added that function in Outliers so you guys can go ahead and tail along. DraftKings, Sleeper, Underdog. No, I've never used Novig personally, but some really good options there for these player props. So Andres Gimenez under 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. He's cashed in 7 of his last 10 games, averaging 1.1 hits, runs, RBIs per game over the last 10 games. And again, like a lot of these player props you see, it's sometimes just 1 or 2 games, especially when you look at last 10 data, really skews the average. He really hasn't been playing that well over the last 10, but that May 4th game versus the Guardians had a really, really solid performance. Now yesterday was his first game back after not playing since May 7th, so almost a month between games here. So taking the under, I think, is definitely the smart play with Andres Gimenez. He played last night, again, first time in almost a month, 0 hits, 0 runs, and 0 RBIs in what was an 8-3 loss for the Blue Jays. But even pre-injury or pre-absence, he really didn't do all that much. So it wasn't like even before he was really scorching the earth. Besides that May 4th game where he had 2 hits, 1 run, 2 RBIs, must be a pretty big Star Wars fan. That's the only explanation I have because everything else does not look all that great. Even the entire season data. Now, he had actually a pretty decent start to the year. First 5-6 games or so actually had a pretty solid start. But overall, taking all the data into consideration, a 61% hit rate on the under this year for Gimenez. 22 out of 36 games, he's cashed the under, averaging 1.44 hits, runs, RBIs per game this season. So, pretty solid numbers. The recent data, very strong. The overall numbers, pretty strong. From a head-to-head perspective, 3 of his last 4 matchups with the Phillies, he's cashed the under. It's a 75% hit rate, averaging 1.25 hits, runs, RBIs per game across the last 4 matchups with the Phillies. And again, they did play yesterday, so one of those 4 games does come from this season's data. And again, he did nothing last night against the Phillies. Then look at the insights provided by Outlier. Andres Gimenez has failed to exceed 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs in 12 of his last 15 games, averaging 0.9 hits, runs, RBIs per game over the last 15 games. That, of course, being an 80% hit rate. Like we mentioned, just was not on a really good run prior to his absence, and I don't expect him to come back and just scorch earth in this matchup. So pretty good numbers overall, pretty good numbers recently, and again, this 12 of his last 15 game data point, very key here. The head-to-head data, although small sample size, also very strong. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any pitching data here, which is a little unfortunate, but we do have the key matchup stats in terms of Gimenez's batting stats. 195 batting average this year, 66.8 WRC plus. Versus right-handed pitchers, those numbers do increase a little bit, but 207 batting average is still not that high, and 81.1 WRC plus, still not that high. So yes, the numbers are better, but it's still not good at that increased line. I'll take a 207 batting average with an under bet any day of the week. All right, guys, our third player prop in today's slate comes from the Orioles-Mariners game, 9:40 p.m. first pitch. We're going Jackson Holliday of the Baltimore Orioles over 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. We're grabbing this for -125 on BetMGM, but again, available on multiple sports books for varying odds. Now, for this player prop, the recent data is actually pretty solid, but the overall numbers are not great. 7 of his last 10 games, he's cashed this over, including, if we narrow it down even further, 4 of his last 5 games, he's cashed the over. It's an 80% hit rate, averaging 2.2 hits, runs, RBIs per game over the last 5 games. So like I said, really solid run of late. 7 of the last 10, averaging 2.4 hits, runs, RBIs per game over the last 10. Even if you go to the last 20 games, it's not bad. 65% hit rate, 13 of his last 20 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 2.35 hits, runs, RBIs per game over the last 20 games. So last 5, last 10, and last 20, all 65% or higher, so pretty good numbers. So what am I talking about here? Well, look at the overall data, 2025 numbers, a 49% hit rate on the year for Jackson Holliday, 26 out of 53 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 1.89 hits, runs, RBIs per game this year. So just shy of half the time, he's cashing the over. But like we've shown you guys, last 20 games, he's really started to figure some stuff out. Had a really cold start to the year. Those first 15 to 20 games of the season, really rough start for Jackson Holliday. And a rough start for the Baltimore Orioles in general. This is a team that was one of the better teams in baseball last year. Dead last. They're even worse than the Red Sox, which Shout out my Red Sox. It's kind of hard to do these days. The fact that Baltimore is below them in the standings is pretty crazy. But you have seen Holiday of late really start to turn it around and start to heat up a little bit, which is really good for us here when it comes to betting his over. From a head-to-head perspective, we only have last night's game to go off of, but he did cash the over last night with 1 hit, no runs, and 1 RBI, and was a 5-1 win for Baltimore. And then if we go ahead and take a look at the insights provided by Outlier, Jackson Holiday has exceeded 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs in 5 of his last 6 games on the road, averaging 2.5 hits, runs, RBIs per game over the last 6 road games. So playing pretty well on the road of late, 83% hit rate over his last 6 road games. Again, 7 of his last 10, 4 of his last 5, 65% over his last 20. So again, really good run over the last month or so for Jackson Holiday. And looking down below at the key matchup stats, pretty solid matchup here versus Emerson Hancock. Now Holiday, 271 batting average, 116.7 WRC plus this year. Again, pretty solid numbers versus right-handed pitchers, which is a pretty decent sample size too, with 175 plate appearances this year versus right-handed pitchers. The numbers have a solid increase, 291 batting average, 134.7 WRC plus. So he was already having a solid year in terms of the overall averages, but versus right-handed pitchers, those numbers increased to even better odds. Now looking at the matchup versus Emerson Hancock, we have no individual head-to-head data here, but Emerson Hancock, his numbers do drop a little bit versus left-handed batters. That being said, those decreased lines are still very high. So let's look at the overall numbers here. 5.64 ERA in the season, 3.07 batting average allowed. Pretty high numbers, not a very good season for Emerson Hancock. Now, versus left-handed batters, you do see the ERA drops to 5.24, and the batting average allowed does drop to 2.82. However, and I mentioned this a lot, just because you see the red here on the outlier screen doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Yes, it's lower than the overall number. You'd like it to be higher, but 2.82 batting average allowed is still very, very high. It's a very high number. 5.24 ERA, very high number. So yes, it is not as high as overall numbers. He is literally slightly better versus left-handed batters, but calling him a better pitcher, yes, mathematically it's true. It's like saying a 3-week expired piece of meat is better than a 5-week expired piece of meat. Yes, one is true. 3-week expired meat is better than 5-week expired meat. It doesn't mean you eat the 3-week expired meat. It's still not good for you. Is it better than option B? Yeah, technically, mathematically speaking, yes. But it's still not good, and that's the same principle here. Yes, 282 batting average allowed is still better than 307, but it's clearly still not a good number, which is obviously, to kind of bring this all together here, my little teacher rant, it's still a really good line for Jackson Holiday. So, and then his home runs per 9 and WOBA do increase slightly. So across the board, seems to be a really solid matchup here for Jackson Holiday as the third player prop in today's video. And by the way, guys, we are about to hit the 13-minute mark in today's video. So if you are still watching at this point, please comment lucky number 13. My lucky number is actually 19, but shout out to my mom. My mom's favorite number is 13. That's her lucky number. But number 13, comment 13 down below if you are still watching the video at this point. As always, guys, I appreciate those who watch through each and every single video here on the channel. But to myself, Evan, Trey put a lot of hard work, so make sure to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already and continue to support Guy Boston Sports. Thank you very much. All right, guys, player prop number 4 in today's video. We have Padres Giants, 9:45 p.m. first pitch. We're going Matt Chapman of the San Francisco Giants under 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. We're grabbing it for -140 on BetMGM, but you get the drill by now. Available on multiple sports books for varying odds. Data is solid. 6 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the under, averaging 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs per game over his last 10 games. Even looking at the entire season view here for Matt Chapman, a 57% hit rate on this under. 34 out of 60 games, he's cashed the under, averaging 1.77 hits, runs, RBIs per game this year. So his average actually is pretty high, but his cash rate on the under is higher, 57% hit rate. So pretty good numbers there for Chapman. But I'm telling you guys, the data only gets better from there. That's okay. I mean, 57% hit rate on the year, solid. 60% hit rate over the last 10 games, fine. But the numbers are going to start getting better here. Head-to-head data, a 65% hit rate against the Padres, and a very decent sample size here. You see 11 of his last 17 matchups with San Diego, he's cashed the under, averaging 1.82 hits, runs, RBIs per game across the last 17 matches. But again, Take a look at March 29th, 2024. He had 3 hits, 3 runs, and 5 RBIs. That 11 hit run RBI game is skewing that average a lot higher than it really should be. Now, the key thing to note here is that in 7 consecutive matchups with the Padres, he's cashed the under. So 11 out of the last 17 looks good, but 7 consecutive and 8 of his last 9 matches with San Diego dating back to last year, he's cashed the under. If you want to go ahead and narrow it down further to just this season, he's played them 4 times, 4-0, 100% hit rate this year with this under against the Padres. He had 0-0 back in April, and then the last 2 days he had 1 hit in each of the last 2 games, but no runs and no RBIs. So really good numbers there, and then the insight provided by outlier Matt Chapman has failed to exceed 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs in 5 of his last 6 games at home. That, of course, includes the 2 games thus far in this home series versus the Padres, averaging just 1 hit, 1 RBI per game over his last 6 home games. So good numbers, continue to get better. And then looking down below at the key matchup stats, this is what sold me on this player prop, because that data I just showed you guys, it's fine, it's good, it's solid. This is what sold me on it, though, is the matchup here versus Nick Pivetta, former Boston Red Sox. And it's crazy that these former Red Sox pitchers, Chris Sale, Pivetta, Eovaldi, these guys all leave and they all become like all-star caliber, Cy Young caliber pitchers outside of Boston. It makes you think. Red Sox have been struggling. Now, I think Garrett Crochet is our ace. I think we found him. But we've been struggling for the last couple of years to find a solid rotation. And look at all the pitchers we've had and let go, and look what they're all doing. Nick Pivetta having a fantastic year in San Diego. But look at Matt Chapman versus Pivetta since 2018, 28 plate appearances, just a 179 batting average against Pivetta with a very large sample size. Not too often you see player versus pitcher matchup where you have, over 20 plate appearances against them. So really good sample size there. And again, not a lot of success for Chapman against Pivetta with a very high 42.9% strikeout rate against Pivetta. So really good numbers there. Chapman this year, 236 batting average, 125.1 WRC plus. Not terrible, not good though. But versus right-handed pitchers, you do see both those numbers decrease. His batting average drops to 224. His WRC plus drops to 122. We like to see that. Now, looking at Pivetta, some of his numbers do increase when facing off with right-handed batters. But one more time, like we talked about a couple of times already in this video, just because you see red on the screen does not necessarily mean it's a bad matchup. It just means that it's an increased number or a decreased number, depending on what you're looking for. Increase or decrease in a negative way. Yes, 229 batting average allowed is 0.30 points higher than his overall 199 batting average. He's definitely better against left-handed batters than right-handed batters this year. However, again, 229 is not a bad number. 261 ERA, 294 WOBA. Again, some of those numbers are increased, but even at the increased line, they still equal a solid matchup versus a batter like Matt Chapman, who struggled this year versus right-handed pitchers. When you parlay all of this stuff together, guys, for minus 140, it's a little high from an odds standpoint, but the value is certainly there, and I love this as the 4th player prop in today's video. And wrapping things up, our 5th and final player prop in today's video comes from the Twins Athletics game, 10:05 p.m. first pitch. We're going Byron Buxton of the Twins over 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs, minus 135 on BetMGM is what we're grabbing it for. And again, for the 1,000th time this week, available on multiple sports books for varying odds. You guys are going to hear me say it over and over. You're going to get sick of me saying it, but I'm going to keep saying it. And we're closing out today's video with a really solid player prop with some really solid data. 7 of his last 10 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 3.2 hits, runs, RBIs per game over his last 10 games. But to narrow it even further, he's cashed it in 6 consecutive games. And if you look at the last 5 data, again, of course, he's cashed it in 6 straight, so he's cashed it in each of his last 5. 100% hit rate, but he's averaging 5 hits, runs, RBIs per game over his last 5 games. I mean, that's absolutely insane that he's averaging 5 hits, runs, RBIs per game. Again, only a 5-game sample size, but still, really phenomenal run he's on right now, including 2 games in this series versus the Athletics, which includes this June 2nd game, where he had 2 hits, 1 run, and 5 RBIs, and was a 10-4 win for the Twins. But wait, there's a lot more here, guys. Last 20 games, 75% hit rate. 15 of his last 20 he's cashed the over, averaging 3.15 hits, runs, RBIs per game over the last 20. So really good. And then look at the overall 2025 season numbers. A 64% hit rate on the year for Byron Buxton. 29 out of 45 games, he's cashed the over, averaging 2.73 hits, runs, RBIs per game this year. So recent data, very recent data, overall recent data, and then the 2025 season data. Everything phenomenal. But all right, maybe you're still not convinced. Well, how about a 100% head-to-head hit rate versus the Athletics dating back to last year? 7 consecutive matchups with the Oakland/Sacramento/Las Vegas A's. 100% hit rate, averaging 4.14 hits, runs, RBIs per game across the last 7 matchups. And again, so far this season in this series, 2-0 with some really solid performances. Again, 2 hits, 1 run, 5 RBIs. And last night, he had 2 hits and 2 RBIs. So really solid back-to-back games. The Twins have scored 10 runs on the Athletics. So the head-to-head data is strong, but you're still not convinced. Well, let me show the insights provided by Outlier. Guys, the numbers on this player prop are crazy. Byron Buxton has exceeded 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs in 6 straight games on the road, averaging 4.5 hits, runs, RBIs per game across the last 6 road games. That, of course, again, is a 100% hit rate. Now, that, of course, includes the last couple games of the Athletics series, as well as, the last couple games of that Seattle series. But you guys are getting the moral of the story. The data across the board is phenomenal on this player prop. And looking down below here at the key matchup stats. Now, Buxton versus Jeffrey Springs, small sample size, just 3 plate appearances since 2018. Now, he hasn't done anything against them, but again, very small sample size, just 3 plate appearances, 0 hits, 0 home runs, 0 RBIs. Take it with a grain of salt. But look at the key matchup stats down below, the splits with Byron Buxton and Jeffrey Springs. You see some good numbers. Now, the overall data for Buxton is solid. 270 batting average, 127.7 WRC plus. Versus left-handed pitchers, you do see a very massive increase in both of those numbers. However, we have to be honest with ourselves here. Only 29 plate appearances versus left-handed pitchers this year. So, very small sample size in comparison to his matchups versus right-handed pitchers. But with what we have in terms of data versus left-handed pitchers this year for Buxton, he has been killing them. 346 batting average, 187.4 WRC plus. We'll take it where we can get it. And look at Jeffrey Springs. His numbers are fine. Nothing crazy, nothing too terrible. Versus right-handed batters, all 4 of these key categories, you see the numbers increase, but they're all minor increases. His ERA is the only one that jumps up quite a bit to 5.40. But the batting average allowed, just 0.03 increase. The WOBA, just 0.02 increase. The home runs per 9, 0.2 increase. So, yes, they're all increases, but they're minor increases. But considering how well Buxton's played against left-handed pitchers, parlay that with how Jeffrey Springs is pitching, which, again, not terrible, but I wouldn't say he's a class act pitcher with those kind of numbers. I mean, Byron Buxton could take advantage here. I think across the board, we got a really solid matchup as the 5th and final player prop in today's slate. And for minus 135, pretty good value. All right, guys, that is it for me today. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. One more time, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. We'll be back tomorrow with another MLB Player Prop video. But until then, guys, I hope you're all winners. Enjoy your Wednesday. Happy hump day. We're halfway through the week. We lost on Monday our ladder challenge. We went 3-3 yesterday, so not the best starts of the week. Let's go ahead and turn it around here with a solid Wednesday slate. Until tomorrow, guys, I hope you're all winners. Let's go ahead and make some money.